Arguably the most popular superhero of all time finally enters the MCU. What's up guys, I'm Ryan, welcome to my channel if you are new here. So we have reached the point in our MCU journey where it is time to rewatch and review Spider-Man Homecoming. It's crazy, we're kind of getting close to being done with the Infinity Saga and we're getting really close to being halfway through this project. But it is after I've watched the film, so I'm just gonna jump right into this, start talking about the film, and of course spoilers if you have not seen it. Spider-Man Homecoming, just once again, a really good MCU film. I talked about this when we started Phase 3 of our MCU rewatch and review series, that with Phase 3, the MCU just had such a hot streak. Like, almost every Phase 3 Marvel movie is like a 8, 9, or 10 out of 10. The quality and the consistency was just nuts with Marvel when it came to Phase 3, and Spider-Man Homecoming is no exception. And I would hope so. Spider-Man is arguably the most popular superhero of all time. He's definitely Marvel's most popular superhero. He's one of my favorite superheroes, so you have to do him right if you're gonna bring him into the MCU, and he had a really good introduction in Civil War, and with his first solo film, it's really stinking good. Tom Holland is greatly cast as our MCU Spider-Man. I love what they've done with the character in the MCU, where they've taken him in this kind of arc he's been on so far, and I can't wait to see how that continues in the Spider-Man Brand New Day coming out next year. I'll be honest, when Spider-Man first came into the MCU, I didn't hate him, definitely not, but it just wasn't that big of a fan of him as much as other people because he wasn't like your classic Spider-Man. They make a lot of changes to classic Spider-Man lore in this film that was just kind of off-putting to me. Now, those changes aren't bad, and we'll talk about those in a moment, but as someone who grew up on a decent amount of Spider-Man content that had classic Spider-Man lore and kind of did the same thing every time, but in different ways, it wasn't exactly the same, but, you know, still had the classic Spider-Man staples and lore and everything. And going into this film, they make a lot of changes, and I understand why, but it is a bit off-putting to me. And since I've set it up already, let's just jump into some of my negatives about the film, and we'll get into more positive stuff later and why this film is really good. As I mentioned before and was talking about, they make a lot of changes to classic Spider-Man lore in this film, and I understand why. With this film, you know, there's been 2 live-action Spider-Man movie franchises already at this point, and Tobey Maguire's trilogy was kind of like your classic Spider-Man stuff, and then The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. But with those films, it tries to be a bit different and kind of dive into Peter's parents and what happened with them. So I understand that going into this film, they wanted to stand out and make a lot of changes and be different. And like I said, those changes aren't necessarily bad, but at the same time, it's a bit jarring at points and off-putting because I feel like they changed so much about classic Spider-Man lore. Like, Flash Thompson is just a fellow nerd in the MCU. He's not this jock who bullies Peter Parker. He's just a fellow nerd who just puts down Peter and just continues to make fun of him. They're not part of different, like, high school cliques. They're part of the same clique, but Flash still bullies him. Aunt May, I enjoy Marissa Tomei as a younger version of Aunt May, but at the same time, like, Aunt May's supposed to be, like this really wise old woman, and I felt like Marissa Tomei's version is kind of silly at points. I like Jacob Batalon as Peter Parker's best friend in the MCU, Ned Leeds, but I am so used to it being Harry Osborn. Really enjoy seeing Zendaya here. I grew up with her on Disney Channel, so this was one of those films where I think she started getting into more the film side of things and being in more mainstream stuff, so I really enjoyed how this kind of was one of the films that kind of helped her take off a bit. And I've come to enjoy her version of MJ. She is really different from, you know, your classic Mary Jane Watson, though. She's not a redhead, she's a bit weird, she's a bit of an outsider, she's not very popular. She has these comments that people kind of look at her like, and of course, her name MJ doesn't stand for Mary Jane, it stands for Michelle Jones. And then with the Spider-Man suit given to Peter by Tony Stark, I do like the more technologically advanced suit. It does lead to some really cool bits and moments in the film, but at the same time, it's not like classic Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man's suit isn't that high-tech. I do kind of like what they do with this film. It's a bit interesting because the high-tech suit looks like your normal classic Spider-Man suit, and then when he gets it taken away from him and he has to wear his old, like, homemade Spider-Man suit, that does not look like your classic Spider-Man suit. It's a bit, poor quality, it's a bit janky, and it looks really homemade. I do like how that's the suit he wears in the final fight, and we get some more classic Spider-Man stuff. He's not wearing the technologically advanced suit. And with that high-tech suit, you know, even with especially with the AI in it, the Karen, I think it's called, he does kind of feel like they're just trying to make him like a copy of Iron Man in a way, and that's not who Spider-Man is. Like, they don't make Spider-Man all that distinct, I feel. And then also, like, going into this film, Peter Parker at least in my opinion, he's supposed to be, or from the Spider-Man content I consume, I'm used to him being much more mature than his fellow classmates. He seems a bit more mature for his age, but here he's like not thinking before he does things, and Peter Parker's, you know, trying to balance going to school, being a superhero, taking care of Aunt May and all that, but here, like, his full focus is like on being Spider-Man. And Peter's in a point in his life where he's just got a lot to learn on how to be a hero. I really didn't like that when we first got the MCU Spider-Man, but, you know, with No Way Home and seeing that this was all kind of been a big arc for him and helping him become that classic Spider-Man, is bothered me less. Now, these changes aren't bad. These are minor criticisms, but I feel like there's so many of them that it's still, and even though I see what they were doing now in light of where they've taken the character Spider-Man in the MCU, it's still a bit off-putting because I feel like they changed so much about classic Spider-Man lore. These are just minor criticisms, but they kind of build up into all just one big criticism that kind of takes a few points off the film for me. But I really do like Peter's arc in the MCU and with this film, and I like how after Civil War, you know, he's gotten this big opportunity to fight with the Avengers, and he wants to become an Avenger, and he keeps saying in this film, even though Tony Stark tells him in the beginning, that he is an Avenger, even though he's not really an Avenger yet. He keeps calling Tony's assistant Happy, and it's nice to have Happy back in this film, but he keeps calling him, asking when his next big mission is, and he's not content just being, you know, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, just looking out for the little guy anymore. Like he said in Civil War, he just kind of looks out for the little guy, but then he gets this big opportunity in Civil War, and he wants bigger things, and he's looking to be Spider-Man all the time and help people and be a big, well-known hero like the Avengers and face bigger threats. And I like how Peter learns in this film to kind of be content with where he's at and accepting that he still has a lot to learn about how to be a hero. And like Tony Stark says at the end of the film, the kid actually made a mature decision. At the end of the film, Peter is offered to start training to become an Avenger, but Peter kind of denies Tony and says he just wants to focus on being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and keep looking out for the little guy for now. It got me thinking, you know, that's really relatable. I think sometimes, you know, big things happen in our life, and there are places we want to be. We want to be like certain people who are successful and are on this certain level. For example, I'm a musician. I play guitar and bass. And I know a decent amount about music and the guitar and everything, but I still have a lot left to learn. I'm not where I want to be at, but I need to accept that and be patient and enjoy kind of the process and not try to cheat to get there. I'm not at the level of an expert like I want to be, but I can't get there by cheating. I have to enjoy the process, put in the hard work and dedication, and be patient until that time comes. And, you know, the Lord has given me many opportunities to sing in front of people. He's helped me learn how to overcome a bit of my stage fright and learn to be more comfortable singing in front of people. And there have been a couple times in my life where I've tried to cheat and find a way to get to the expert level quicker, but I needed to learn that I just have to enjoy the process and put in the hard work and dedication and just be patient in the growing period and learn to enjoy it. And that's what Peter does in this film, and I feel like a lot of people out there can relate to that because we want big things and kind of, you know, like Peter in Civil War, once we get a taste of something bigger and better, we want to be there constantly, but that's not always going to happen. Sometimes we have those kind of experiences, but we go back to our mundane lives and life kind of gets normal again. We want to be there, but we have to learn to enjoy that. And Peter wants to be Spider-Man all the time. And it's kind of similar to Stargirl Season 2, if you watch that show. If you don't, you should. It's flippin' phenomenal. But in the opening of Season 2, Courtney, or Stargirl, you know, she's in Season 1, she and her friends defeated this big supervillain team, and she's on high alert, going out patrolling every night, wanting to be a superhero all the time, and her stepfather has to teach her that she has to learn to enjoy life and she can't be a superhero all the time. And that's kind of what Spider-Man learns in this film. Kind of reminds me of 1 Timothy chapter 3, where Paul is writing to Timothy, and in this chapter he's talking about qualifications for being a bishop or an overseer or elder in the church. And in verse 6 he says that he can't be a novice, he can't be a new convert to the faith. Not that there's anything wrong with being a new convert to the faith. If you just become a Christian, that's wonderful, that's awesome, we're glad you're part of the church. But you shouldn't be in a position of high authority because you've got a lot to learn. I just recently was allowed to start teaching my young adult Sunday school class at church. My young adults leader kind of gave me that go ahead, and he told me that he thinks I'm ready to start teaching and that I should learn how to teach, and I've taught a couple times in my Sunday school class, but it's because he's seen years of me growing and learning and becoming more like Christ, and he kind of trusts me to teach under his, authority, of course, but he sees the progress I've made and that I'm not new to this and I've learned so much. I was looking at the Enduring Word Commentary, which is a online Bible commentary that's pretty decent. I do recommend it, but obviously it's a commentary. Don't take it as like scripture or anything. But commentaries, I feel like, can be very useful in helping you kind of understand the point that scripture may be getting at when you don't understand scripture. But I was looking at it, and it was talking about 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 6, and it brought up this quote by John Calvin, and Calvin said, "Novices are not only bold and impetuous, but are puffed up with foolish self-confidence, as though they could fly beyond the clouds." And that reminded me, that's where Peter is in this film, he wants to be Spider-Man all the time, waiting for his next big mission, but he's kind of new to being a superhero. He's got a lot left to learn, and we see him make all these mistakes because he's trying to get on top and shoot to get ahead. He wants to be like in the big leagues now. He's bold and impetuous, and he's kind of foolish and very arrogant and self-confident at times. And he puts off other important things and aspects of his life, and he's kind of fully focused on being Spider-Man in this film. But he has to learn to be patient and enjoy helping the little guy. And you're not always going to have these big world-ending events as a superhero to try to stop. Sometimes you just gotta help the little guy. And I love how Peter makes that decision at the end to not join the Avengers, and he comes to the conclusion that he still has a lot left to learn. And I love what they do with Tony Stark in this film, and I love how they put him in this film and make him kind of that father figure and mentor to Peter, and he gives them that technologically advanced suit, and then he takes it away from him when he feels like he's made so many mistakes and he's not thinking it through. And I love when Tony threatens to take the suit away, and he's like, "I'm nothing without this suit," and Tony tells him, "If you think that, you shouldn't have it." In getting that suit and helping fight Captain America and some other big heroes in Civil War, I feel like Peter was kind of puffed up and got a bit arrogant and thought he was ready for something that he wasn't ready for, and that leads to him making some mistakes and thinking he's ready for bigger and better things that he's not ready for. And that's just what makes this movie for me. That's what I love most about it, is the lesson that Peter learns in this film. I said that I really didn't like how he was kind of starting out immature and had a lot to learn, but I see now that that was actually a really good story for Peter Parker. And I like how over the course of this MCU Spider-Man trilogy that it's kind of a becoming story, Peter Parker's arc in those first 3 MCU Spider-Man films, and helping him become the classic, mature, smart Spider-Man. And I can't wait to see him and where he is, and to see him be hopefully more mature and be a bit of a wiser hero in Brand New Day next year. A couple more things before I wrap up this review. Tony Stark being in this film. Marvel, you need to take some notes for your new saga, because, this was just a really wise decision. Having, your main star just consistently being in films throughout the Infinity Saga. I love how they put Tony Stark here because, the last time we saw him was in Civil War, and then if he wasn't here, the next time we would have seen him was in Infinity War, and there's a kind of a big gap in between those films where we don't see Cap again until Infinity War, and when we open Infinity War, he kind of feels at a distance. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen him, and there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But with Tony, we see him consistently, and I love that they put him here, because when we pick up again with him in Infinity War, he doesn't feel at a distance. It's like we know where this guy is, we know what he's been up to, he doesn't feel distant, he feels close, it feels like we know him because he's consistently been in the MCU. He's in every other film, kind of. But Marvel, you need to take some notes. We need to see characters consistently. Why haven't we seen Shang-Chi in 4 or 5 years? Why is the next time we're gonna see him in Avengers Doomsday? Why haven't we gotten Shang-Chi 2? Someone please answer my questions. So that's just one big worry for me heading into Avengers Doomsday, is a lot of the characters we're gonna see in the film, it's been 3 to 4 to 5 years for some of these characters since we've seen them. I feel like they're gonna feel at a distance, and they haven't had an arc in the MCU, and these are supposed to be the big saga ending events, and there's gonna be no payoff for arcs because they didn't really set up any arcs. Okay, last thing before I wrap up this review, sorry for venting a little bit there, but the villains in this film, really enjoy them. Getting some classic Spider-Man villains, even though not all of the villains we get in this film, there's a lot of people in this film who are villains in the comics, but they're not wearing their suits and everything, like Aaron Davis. I love how we get Aaron Davis in the film, but he's not the Prowler, and then we get that mention that he is a nephew, and he is, of course, Miles Morales' uncle, so hopefully we'll get Miles Morales soon in the MCU. I love how we get both versions of the Shocker in this film, a part of the Vulture's crew. We get the Jackson Bryce or Montana version, then we get the Herman Schultz version, and then we also get the Tinkerer, a part of the Vulture's crew, and then I love how we get Michael Mando teased as Scorpion in this film, and I'm really excited that he's going to be back in Brand New Day next year, hopefully sporting a comic-accurate Scorpion suit. But our main villain here, Batman himself, Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, as the Vulture, one of the best MCU villains, because I just think he has pretty much everything. He's played by a great actor. Michael Keaton gives a great performance. He's got a great relatable motivation. I love how when after Peter figures out who he is and he chases him down to his hideout, he talks about how his job was taken away, and there's the rich and powerful don't care about the little guy, like how Spider-Man does, and he's that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man looking out for the little guy, and he had to resort to crime to provide for, provide for his family, and he's selling these high-tech weapons that he picked up while cleaning up after the invasion of New York. And that's another reason I love this film, is getting kind of another different perspective on the MCU, not just Spider-Man's perspective, but also Adrian Toomes' perspective. I liked seeing a bit of a younger person's perspective on the MCU. Peter Parker is a high schooler, but also Adrian Toomes is a man who has been kind of wronged by the system, and he's been kicked out of his job, and he resorted to crime to provide for his family. He's doing it to provide for his family and to kind of get back at the rich and powerful who he feels doesn't care about him. And that's really relatable. That's a really good motivation for his character and for his villain. I kind of like how he's not trying to take over the world or anything. He's just trying to provide for his family and kind of get revenge on those who he feels has wronged him. And Michael Keaton gives such a great performance. I love the twist where we find out when Peter asks Liz to homecoming and shows up at her house, and Michael Keaton opens the door and it's revealed that Adrian Toomes is her father, and they put two and two together, they figure out who each other are. And that scene in the car where he tells Liz to go inside, and then he wants to talk to Peter and give him the dad talk, and then he tells him that he knows who he is. He figures out through asking him questions, trying to get to know him, that he is Spider-Man, and just that scene in the car is just so well done. And I like how he shows him mercy because he saved Liz earlier in the film at the Washington Monument, but he tells him that if he interferes with his plans again, he will kill him. And that's a little bit of a criticism I have. I feel like there's multiple points in that final fight where Michael Keaton's Vulture could kill Spider-Man, but he doesn't. He doesn't kill Peter when he has the chance, and I just don't know if he didn't have the guts to or something. I don't know, but I felt like why didn't you just kill him there? But that's just a minor criticism. Michael Keaton's Vulture is one of the best MCU villains. Like I said, great actor, great performance, he's really relatable, and his motivation's really good. Spider-Man Homecoming, fantastic entry, first solo entry for Spider-Man in the MCU. I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But with all that said, I think that's all my thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming, so thank y'all for watching this review. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and let me know down below what you think of Spider-Man Homecoming. Would love to have a conversation with y'all about this movie. Click right here to subscribe if you enjoy my content, and right here is my last MCU review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Oh gosh, so emotional. And then right here is a playlist of all my MCU videos if you want to check out some of my other MCU content. And with that, I hope y'all have a blessed one, guys. I'll see y'all in the next video.